Columbia, the News Hour.
Good evening. Robin is off this weekend. Geological experts are calling it one of the biggest landslides in Canadian history. Yesterday's massive slide in the Pemberton Valley comes in second in size, only to the devastating Hope Slide back in 1965. A local state of emergency and an evacuation order were lifted today as fears about flooding in the Pemberton Valley subsided. It happened about 65 kilometers north of the village of Pemberton. Mud and rocks came crashing down the side of Capricorn Mountain, partially blocking the Lillooet River and creating a dam on Meager Creek. And to the relief of emergency officials and people in the region, the lake that formed behind that blockage drained on its own overnight. And our John Daly has been following this story since it broke, and he joins us live from the banks of the Lillooet River tonight. John, I understand you went up in a chopper today to get a close-up look at the slide. How did it look?
Well, we sure did, Ann, and I'll tell you something. You will see in a second just how dramatic it is. It's a marked contrast to what it's like here on the shores of the Lillooet, some 37 kilometers south of that slide. But up there, it's anything but placid. Welcome to Capricorn Creek. The avalanche, which forced the evacuation of the Pemberton Valley, continues. You can even see giant chunks of what was the top of Devastation Glacier, now down on the floodplain below. Back in Capricorn Creek, pilot Steve Gray says the landslides are almost continuous. From Devastation Glacier, the avalanche came down Capricorn Creek and crashed into Meager Creek, the rocks, dirt, and debris running 1.5 kilometers up Meager. Then all of it spilling back down Meager all the way to the Lillooet River. It was at the intersection of Meager and Capricorn that the dam started to build. What you're seeing here is the remains of the dam that everyone was afraid was going to break. And it did last night. That channel that you see there, that's where the water came through. And behind it was a lake that was approximately 3 kilometers long and the width of the valley. This is the intersection of Capricorn and Meager Creeks. This is where all of the water and debris was pent up that the officials were afraid would come rocketing down and perhaps cause a flood down in the Lillooet River. You can see the water level is way higher than what you're seeing now. High enough to leave chunks of a glacier almost in the now rocky, muddy Lillooet River. But since the dam was breached at about 3 a.m., the flow has been continuous. No giant sudden burst to cause flooding on the Lillooet, just a dramatic devastation from an avalanche almost as big as the Hope Slide. Now, Ann, while there's no immediate danger to the Pemberton Valley from the flooding of the Lillooet River as a result of the avalanche, it could be a long time before the popular Meager recreation area is open, is accessible by vehicle. Officials say to hike into Meager Creek area and to go up there anywhere near the hot springs could be trouble. So the hot springs right now, not so much.
So currently there are a couple of things going on. The landslide deposit itself on Mount Meager is very, very liquid, and so we are not able to go on the land, to land on or to walk on or to travel on the landslide at all at this point. It is not likely to support any machinery. It's actually not even likely to support a person. We don't recommend that anyone's there. Of course, it's an incredibly wide damage area. We're looking at about, on the main slide itself, 10 kilometers long, 0.5 kilometer wide, and within that zone there are debris flows, debris floods, slumps, active ongoing erosion that at any other time would be considered hazardous. They are dwarfed by the overall landscape that has been now produced, but they are still there. And the last and probably more important continuing hazard is that there are numerous tension cracks up on the peak of Mount Meager. There are a number of bedrock pieces that are still in a precarious position, ready to go, and we're looking at subsequent landslides on the order of 1 million cubic meters, maybe a little bit more, maybe a little bit less. They could be occurring anywhere from hours from now to months from now, and so there's going to be some ongoing study that needs to be done.
So, Anne, as you just heard, obviously there's much more to be learned from this avalanche, and the geoscientists will be busy for quite some time. Anne?
Still at the mercy of Mother Nature, John. Thank you very much. Incredible footage, by the way. That's our John Daly reporting live in the Pemberton Valley tonight. Now to the more than 1,500 people who were evacuated from the area. Today, they were allowed to return home, and although the worst-case flooding scenario did not happen, shock and worry set in when the evacuation order went out yesterday. Our Ted Field has spent the day talking with many of those who were forced to leave the area and joins us now live with more. And the story of 2 Vancouver firefighters who apparently didn't even know they were in danger. Is that right, Ted?
It was absolutely amazing, and you're right, Ann. First of all, the people in the Pemberton Valley had that shock last night, and we're talking late at night, 11:30, suddenly there were knocks on doors. There were actually knocks on tents, telling people it's time to evacuate. They were concerned about what might be happening in the Lillooet River. Meanwhile, there were 2 Vancouver firefighters out hiking, and they had no idea what was going on around them until they found out this morning that there was a search underway, because the search people found their vehicle and were worried they might be trapped under hundreds of thousands of tons of mud.
In the middle of the night, horse trailers taking precious cargo out of Pemberton Meadows. With little notice, 1,500 residents were told to evacuate and take what they could.
I just ran up to grab my dogs and make sure my grandparents were out.
You never know what's going to happen, eh?
One family made sure to grab the family rabbit named Cloudy, but knew accommodation was going to be challenging.
This is going to be ridiculous, though, because my uncle and my grandmother had 3 dogs. Wow. They have a Jack Russell and 2 Shih Tzus. The sad thing is, she's bigger than the smallest Shih Tzu.
I wrap myself around and then I sleep like this.
Around midnight, police woke up 60 people attending the Hellavang family annual reunion. 10 stayed, others left. A few are trickling back now that the order's been lifted. Last year, the gathering watched forest fires on nearby mountains.
It's always something. Next year, they're saying maybe a plague of locusts, or maybe the wolves will come, who knows.
Search crews were on patrol after 2 Vancouver firefighters hiking near the slide were reported overdue. A helicopter spotted them and pulled them out. They had no idea there had been a huge slide.
Oh, that helicopter sure is flying low. And Jay's like, hey, I think it's going to land here. And he lands right beside us on the road where we're hiking out. And we're like, okay, what's going on? Like, are we in trouble for something? And the guy hops out and he says, do you guys own a black Toyota Echo that's parked at the campground? And I said, yeah, that's my car. And he says, oh, thank God. We thought you guys were buried. And we're like, why would we be buried? He's like, there's a huge landslide.
The latest threat has people living in and around Pemberton talking.
A roadblock where we were from, and we couldn't get to the village today, so it was a little bit nerve-wracking. You know, we were sort of taking count of what we had in the freezer. We didn't know how long we would be stuck.
There's absolutely nothing you can do when half a mountain decide to go away and block the river. So that's, I guess, the risk to live in such a beautiful place.
And Ann, usually the Lillooet River behind me would be a green color. Matter of fact, on a warm day, you might even consider maybe dipping your toe in it or having a bit of a swim. Right now, it's sort of brown like the Fraser River would be. I guess you could almost classify this as glacier fresh water, because it was, of course, the glacier that broke off and started melting that caused this. But I'm telling you right now, I wouldn't be interested in drinking this. Ann?
Nor would I, Ted. Thank you for that report. That's our Ted Field reporting live from Pemberton Valley tonight.